Hello everyone, my name is Trip Company and this is Hanoi. This video is actually a Hanoi guide, but not the top 10, top 12, top 20. I will draw a bigger picture through this video. Why their name is Hanoi, what is its background, and which areas does Hanoi have, kind of that. Yes, it's time to discover Hanoi itself.
Hanoi is the capital city of Vietnam, located in the north of the country. It is the exact opposite of Ho Chi Minh in the south. If Ho Chi Minh is the largest economic city in Vietnam, not just in the south, Hanoi is slightly smaller than that, but it is the official capital city and the political center of the country. It is a bit like the relationship between Beijing and Shanghai in China. Hanoi for politics, Ho Chi Minh for economics. Of course, that doesn't mean Hanoi is small. It has a population of over 8 million, almost 9 million. It covers an area of about 3,360 square kilometers, which is 33 times the size of Paris. But don't overestimate the number itself. This is a nominal administrative region, and there are some urban districts called Quan. It's about 300 square kilometers. And half of Hanoi's population, 4 million, live in these urban districts. The name Hanoi literally means inside river. Ha is river and Noi is inside. And yes, the Hong River, aka Red River, swirls around Hanoi. Hanoi is the beginning of the Red River Delta. Because of this strategic location, Hanoi has long been considered the most important city in northern Vietnam, or even in the whole country. In the next part, we will find out how. Hanoi became the capital city of Vietnam in 1009. They built Thăng Long Imperial Citadel in Hanoi. After many centuries, in the 19th century, Hue in mid-Vietnam briefly became the capital city of Nguyen dynasty for a while. Yet, it is a great location for the whole country. But Hanoi was still the central city in the north. Here's a map of Hanoi in history. It was made by a Frenchman in 1873. It's a tiny fraction of the current map of Hanoi's urban area. Hanoi's expansion was driven by the French colonial government. In 1873, the end of the 19th century, initially the center of French Indochina was Saigon. But from 1902 to 45, Hanoi reclaimed the capital. During the time, the French built a whole European-style city in Hanoi. They built lots of French-style architecture and reorganized the city structure. The difference with Ho Chi Minh is that the French built a whole new city of Saigon, but Hanoi kept the original imperial castle and the old quarter, and they just built the new city next to it. As we'll see in more detail in Hanoi features, it's one of the interesting things about Hanoi. But if you look at this expanded map of the city, it's still a fraction of what modern Hanoi is. In 1902, when Hanoi actually became the capital of the Indochina, the population was about 150,000, which is only 1.8% of the current population. Anyway, that's how Hanoi got its French flavor for a few decades. After Second World War, the Vietnamese Communist Party, led by Ho Chi Minh, centered on Hanoi. The city became the capital of Communist Vietnam. That's how it's been to this day. And like many Southeast and East Asian cities, Hanoi has grown enormously in modern time. From a population of just 410,000 in 1996, past the 1 million mark in the 90s. And in 2008, it underwent an administrative reorganization, annexing the surrounding rural areas. From the 90s, Vietnamese economy started to develop and the expanding urban area was filled with apartments. This is a modern city of Hanoi, which different from the Old Quarter and French Quarter. So the history of Hanoi can be divided into three main parts. The successive Vietnamese dynasties, starting with the Le dynasty, when the city's core was laid out, and the colonial period of 19th and 20th century with French influences, and finally the modern, vastly expanded republic period. With this background, we are now ready to explore three features of Hanoi. Saigon in the south, or Ho Chi Minh City, has constructed as a French colonial city. As a result, the city's main monuments are French colonial architecture, and there are very few traditional Vietnamese elements. But Hanoi was once the center of French Indochina, but it's been a traditional Vietnamese city ever since. And even during French colonial period, French didn't just tear down the old city and put up a new one. They left the old quarter and built their own new city next to it. So in Hanoi's old places, you will find a mix of stunning French architecture and an intricate Asian neighborhoods with traditional temples. You just walk around, but the mood naturally changes. This is a feature of Hanoi that Saigon, which is just a modern city, doesn't have. We talked about the name of Hanoi earlier, Hanoi, which means inside river. In fact, there is only one river, and that is Red River. Instead, there are lots of ponds or lakes, puddles. Hanoi has more than 20 large lakes, and if you count the little puddles, you cannot really count them. From the observation deck, you can see water everywhere. There are quite a few cities which has artificial canals. They often nickname themselves as the Venice of the East. Suzhou, China, Yanagawa, Japan, Bangkok, Thailand, all have canals, but it's very rare to find a big city like Hanoi with so many natural ponds and lakes. It's truly a city of water, and these pools are protected by the Hanoi government. In the past, there have been cases of urban development and filling them up, but now the government has banned it, saying it is a part of Hanoi's identity. Of course, it's not very clean. There's a lot of rubbish and it smells sometimes, but it's also something that you don't see in other cities. There are two types of people who go to Hanoi. First group is who simply travel Hanoi, and the second group has their business in Hanoi. There is where things get interesting. The demand for travel in Hanoi is concentrated to the old quarter, but the old quarter, as you can see, is not a very nice place to live, right? The buildings are old, the roads are narrow, and so noisy and crowded. So, people who come to Hanoi to work tend to live not in the old quarter. They live in the newer, nicer neighborhoods with apartments and condominium and all these nice things. Of course, international schools are also placed out of the old quarter. But people who live in these nice apartments far away from the old quarter don't have much reason to go to the old quarter. They've done all the sightseeing when they first came to Hanoi, and Hanoi has bad public transport, so it's hard to get there and hard to get back. On the other hand, tourists can go to the observatory, however, they don't have the motivation to visit these apartment residences. So the Hanoi of tourists and the Hanoi of expats are partially two different cities. Do you remember the Li Dynasty's Tanglong Imperial Citadel? It locates between West Lake, the largest lake of Hanoi, and Hoang Lake, where a turtle appeared and delivered a sword. This Tanglong Citadel and the Old Quarter, they are combination. Where there is a political center, there is a commercial district, just like Minshan's residence and its old town. Tanglong Imperial Citadel itself, unfortunately, doesn't have much left of its original appearance, but it is still registered as a UNESCO Cultural Heritage Site. Tanglong means dragon ascending. Vietnamese is a part of scenographic spear like Japan. This Tanglong and Shoryu of Shoryuken, the symbolic skill of Street Fighter, have same meaning. Again, dragon ascending. With such historical significance, it's no wonder that the mausoleum of Ho Chi Minh, the national father of Vietnam's tomb, has built in this area. Also, Presidential Palace of Vietnam and other government buildings are in here. They make this area one of the most heavily guarded and solemn districts in Hanoi. Before exploring the Old Quarter, you should know about Hoang Kiem Lake. It's not a big lake. Under 10% area of Hyde Park, London, there are Ng Ok San Temple and the Turtle Pagoda in the lake. You can enter to Ng Ok San Temple directly, but the Turtle Pagoda can only be seen from a distance. And there's a promenade along the lake shore. It's very popular during day and night both. Back in the Old Quarter, this area is called at 36 streets because it's very commercial area and each street has a different theme. Some streets are for groceries, some for religious items, some are for clothing and so on. Each street has a name with Hang. The center of the Old Quarter is Dongkinyatuk Square. I know it's hard to pronounce. Anyway, just north of Hoang-Kiem Lake. If you divide the haute couture by direction from here, it is easy to get an idea of the atmosphere in each area. Overall, the north is busier and the west is more quiet. Even so, it can be confusing when you first go there. The first interesting place in the west is Hanoi Big Church, as known as St. Joseph's Cathedral. You can find it on Lee Kok-Soo Street. This is where you will find all the relatively cool shops like 4-piece pizza and cool bars. There's even a Starbucks Reserve and some nice hotels. And on the lakeside, the Four Seasons, the world-class luxury hotel, is getting ready to open. It's fairly prosperous area. North of Dongkinyatuk Square, there's no landmark like Hanoi Big Church, but it's got a lot of active shops and lots of food traffic. I will give you a few points to remember. First, look for Eunyeonju Junior High School. Just below, there is a Bunja Dak Kim. This is Bunja Alley. Next is Hangdao Street. There are many massage shops and restaurants. There are also a lot of colorful objects on the street. The highlight here is the weekend night market. There's a really long line of stalls. It's a great place to go if you like a bargain hunting. I recommend to save the street itself than any of the shops. Next up is Dahian Beer Street next door. As the name suggests, it's a bustling in the evening at the night, full of bars and bath chairs. It's not as big as noisy as Bangkok's Khaosan or Ho Chi Minh's Bui Vien. Here is Hanoi with a more low-key vibe. And it's not just the beer district itself. There's a whole nightlife scene around here. Look for Mad Monkey Hostel in Google Maps. There's a lot of Western backpackers and a lot of Vietnamese friends who come to hang out. If you're looking for a booze-fueled night out near the haute couture, hang out around the Dahian and Mad Monkey. East of Dongkinyatuk Square is a bit tricky. There are some nice hotels and restaurants. There are vegetables and meat stalls in the morning. It's a kind of mix of all the different haute couture's vibes. It's a more crowded area than any others because it's closer to the boulevard. So we've split the haute couture into 3 areas. This is important, so keep your eye for a few seconds. And to the southeast of Hoang-Kiem Lake is the French Quarter. It's centered around Hanoi Opera House. It's also called as Jangtian, after the street that connects Hoang-Kiem to the Opera House, just like El Gaucho's Jangtian branch. This is Hanoi's most upscale shopping district, full of luxury goods and expensive restaurants. And even if you don't buy anything, the buildings are beautiful, and there are lots of locals dressed up to take photos. The French Quarter is also the area with the highest concentration of luxury hotels in Hanoi. The iconic Sofitel Legend Metropole, Capella, Hotel de l'Opéra, and former Hilton, now World of Astoria, and other luxury hotels in Hanoi are housed in very modern buildings. But the French Quarter hotels are European classic. These buildings are low and old, which has its drawbacks. This is the unique point of French Quarter hotels. I don't want to spend lots of money. No luxury hotel, no luxury restaurant. So on Dinla Street, a block north of the Jangtian Street, where you will find unpretentious cafes and bookshops on the cheap. Looking back at Hoang-Kiem Lake, that leaves us with one direction. At first glance, this side of the street doesn't look like much for tourists. Yes, the streets are not very active either. However, the Hoa Lo Prison Museum is worth a visit. The building has been used as a prison since the French colonial period. The next area to explore is the train station. Nowadays, Hanoi is very sprawling. But 100 years ago, Hanoi was limited to Hoang-Kiem and the shores of the West Lake. So, Hanoi Railway Station was built on the outskirts of the city center. Now that the city has expanded, it's right in the middle of the city center. Similar to many European railway stations, from this train station, you can ride a train to Da Nang, Ho Chi Minh City to the south, Lao Cai, the entrance of Sapa, to the northwest, and east to Haiphong. And the famous Hanoi Railway Street is just north of the station. It used to be a free-for-all, but it's a shame it's getting more and more controlled. More on that in my Hanoi content guide video. Now we head up to Hanoi's largest lake, the West Lake. In Vietnamese, it's called Ho Toi. It's 6.5 square kilometers across, almost double of Central Park of New York. so it's impossible to walk around the entire lake on foot. You are going to be visiting different parts of the lake for different purposes. The most popular area for tourists is the southern part of the pagoda. The temple has a great backdrop of the West Lake. There is a high-end coffee shop with a cool view too. If you just want a taste of the West Lake on a short trip, this is the place to go. On the east side of the lake, there are a few lakeview luxury hotels. Intercontinental and Sheraton are the most famous. Unfortunately, they are a bit dated. In addition to the hotels, there are quite a few luxury residences here too. So there are a lot of expats and lots of experienced restaurants which target to foreigners. Apart from the areas in the south and the hotels in the east, the rest of West Lake is not very interesting to visit. Unfortunately, most of the rest of Hanoi's neighborhoods are not very attractive to tourists too. Sure, there are shopping malls and busy sub-city centers, but what people want from a trip to Hanoi is the content of the old quarter, not the modern city. And the overall vibe is typical too. Newer neighborhoods with less character, full of apartments. Most tourists, when they have enough time, they'd rather go to Halong Bay. They go to Sapa and other places, not this modern city. But you're still curious, what are these neighborhoods like and what's are in there? Firstly, the most visited area is Lotte Center, about 2.3 kilometers west of the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum. It is currently the second tallest building in Hanoi. The building houses residents, hotels, supermarkets, etc., and an observation deck on the top. There's also Daewoo Hotel nearby and many other tall buildings, so when you come here from the Old Quarter or French Quarter, you will feel you are in a completely different city. It was a feature number 3. And from here, go 3.5 kilometers southwest again to the Gyeongnam Landmark 72. This is a building built by a Korean corporation, just like Lotte Center. At 350 meters high, it was once the tallest building in Vietnam. But now, it has lost the top spot to Ho Chi Minh's Vinhome Landmark 81. And the area near the Landmark 72 is called My Dinh. This is now the largest Korean community in Hanoi. And then there's also the Hai Ba Trung area, south of the French Quarter. You will get Buncha Hong Lien, which is famous for Buncha of Obama, the former president of the United States. He had dish in here. And then there's a Hilton Garden Inn, which is a good value hotel. It's not the main part of the trip, but depending on the person. Finally, Noi Bai Airport, the main entrance to Hanoi, is in the north of the city. There is no railway or metro system between the airport and the city center, but taking a bus is very easy, so don't worry about that. That's all about Hanoi. Let's summarize what you learned today.
Yes, these are the basic things to understand the city of Hanoi. And I'm standing in front of the Opera House, the center point of French colonial era. Thank you for watching a long video. And if you have any kind of experience or opinion of Hanoi, please write your comment. Thank you very much.